You wake up in the dark and you already know what time it is. No clock, no phone, no glowing numbers on a nightstand. Just the color of the sky through a gap in the trees and a quiet ache behind your eyes telling you the night is almost over. For nearly all of human history, this was the only clock anyone had. For roughly 300,000 years, nobody counted hours, nobody owned a calendar, nobody set an alarm. And yet your ancestors somehow knew exactly when to hunt, when to gather, when to move camp, and even when a woman's body was likely to conceive a child. How does a species survive for that long without ever inventing a clock? The answer is stranger than you'd guess, and it starts with a single, scratched piece of bone. In 1973, in a cave in the mountains of what is now Eswatini, archaeologists found a small baboon leg bone with 29 clearly cut notches running down one edge. They named it the Lebombo bone, after the mountains where it was found. It's roughly 43,000 to 44,000 years old, which makes it one of the oldest deliberately marked objects ever discovered. 29 notches. That number should sound familiar. It's close to the length of a lunar cycle, the roughly month-long stretch it takes the moon to go from full to dark, and back to full again. It's also close to the average human menstrual cycle. Some researchers think the bone was tracking both at once, the same rhythm playing out in the sky and in the body. Now picture the person who made it. Not a scientist hunched over a lab bench. A woman, maybe, sitting near a fire, running her thumb along smooth bone, cutting one more small groove after watching one more moon rise and fall. She wasn't marking hours. She had no reason to. Hours only matter once you're coordinating with strangers, catching trains, clocking into a shift. She was tracking something slower and bigger than that. The return of the rains, the fattening of migrating animals, the countdown to when she might give birth. She wasn't alone in this. Thousands of miles away in what's now the Democratic Republic of Congo, another notched bone turned up decades earlier. The Ishango bone, dated to somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 years old, carries similar clusters of marks, grouped in ways that hint at deliberate counting rather than random scratches. Researchers still argue over exactly what it counted. A calendar? A tally of trade goods? A record of lunar phases? Nobody knows for certain. But the pattern across two continents is hard to ignore. Long before writing, long before agriculture, humans were already carving time into bone. In the 1970s, an archaeologist named Alexander Marshak pushed this idea even further. He examined dozens of engraved bones and antlers from Ice Age Europe under a microscope and argued that many of the marks weren't decoration at all. He believed they were sequential notations, added a little at a time, night after night, tracking the changing phases of the moon over months. His interpretation is still debated today, but even the debate tells you something. The idea of a hunter-gatherer quietly keeping a private lunar log isn't science fiction. It's a live hypothesis, argued over by serious researchers, because the physical evidence keeps showing up. Here's where it gets stranger, though. Because the deepest layer of ancient timekeeping wasn't a tool at all. It was the human body itself. In 2013, a biologist named Horacio de la Iglesia ran an experiment that sounds almost too simple to matter. He studied groups still living largely without electric light, including the Hadza of Tanzania and the Toba, or Calm, of Argentina. His team strapped small activity monitors to their wrists for weeks at a time, just recording when people moved and when they went still. What he found reframed everything we assume about sleep. Without artificial light, nobody fell asleep at some random hour and then fought an alarm clock the next morning. Their bodies synced almost perfectly to the setting and rising sun. People drifted off a few hours after sunset and woke up shortly before sunrise, night after night, with barely any variation between individuals. Even on cloudy nights, when the temperature dropped, people tended to sleep slightly longer, as if their bodies were reading the weather as another kind of signal. Compare that to a modern sleep study. Most people today, given a dim room and no schedule, still take days to fully reset. Their internal clock has drifted so far from sunlight that it has to relearn the pattern. Your ancestors never had that problem. They never needed to relearn it because they never lost it in the first place. Your ancestors didn't need a clock hanging on the wall. They were the clock. Light hit their eyes, hormones shifted in response, and their whole body quietly counted down towards sunrise. Scientists call this internal system a circadian rhythm, a roughly 24-hour biological cycle built into nearly every cell in your body. That same system is still running inside you right now. It's just constantly getting drowned out by screens, streetlights, and rooms that never truly go dark. But short cycles like sleep and medium cycles like the moon still left a gap. What told a group of hunter-gatherers that the rains were 3 weeks out? Or that a particular fruit tree 100 miles from camp was about to ripen? The sky told them, but not in the way you'd expect. A researcher named Dwayne Hamacher has spent years documenting Aboriginal Australian astronomy, and what he's found looks less like a calendar and more like a memory palace stretched across the entire night sky. Many Aboriginal communities didn't just observe the stars, they wove entire seasonal survival guides into stories about them, passed down as songlines, long chains of narrative and song tied to specific paths across the land, walked and sung by generation after generation. When a particular star or star cluster appeared low on the horizon at dusk, it wasn't just scenery, it was a signal. Time to head toward the coast, time to expect a certain fish to spawn upstream, time to avoid a stretch of desert that was about to turn lethally dry. The sky wasn't decoration, it was an instruction manual, updated by nobody, and somehow, still accurate. So let's reconstruct a single ordinary day, using all three systems running at once. You wake because the sky has gone gray, not because anything told you to. Your body decided morning was close hours before you opened your eyes. As you walk toward the gathering grounds, an elder mentions that a certain star rose early the night before, and the group starts discussing whether it's time to move camp closer to the river. Later, someone runs a thumb along a small notched bone hanging at their hip, silently counting how many moons remain until an expected birth. 3 separate clocks, operating in the same morning. None of them agree with each other, the way a single ticking clock demands agreement. And none of them needed to. Here's the counterintuitive part. We usually assume ancient life was loose and unstructured compared to our tightly scheduled modern world. The opposite might be closer to the truth. Your ancestors' sense of time was arguably more accurate than yours, just measured in completely different units. Their sleep matched their biology, with a precision most people today, running on alarms and blue light, would consider close to miraculous. Their seasonal predictions, encoded in songlines and star positions, and tested across thousands of years rather than a handful of seasons, rarely failed them. A modern clock can tell you it's exactly 7 a.m. It cannot tell you whether the rains are 3 weeks away or whether the fish are about to run. We didn't invent time. We invented one single standardized version of it and quietly traded away several older, quieter versions to get it. Think about how often you check the time today. On your phone, on your laptop, on a microwave, a car dashboard, a smartwatch buzzing on your wrist. All of them agree with each other down to the second. And yet how often do you still feel like you're behind, rushing, out of sync with the day? A body that once ran on sunlight, moon phases, and star positions is now expected to run on meetings, notifications, and someone else's schedule. It's no wonder. So many people lie awake at 2 a.m., wired and exhausted at once. That's not a personal failure. That's a system built for one kind of clock, trying to survive on an entirely different one. So the next time your alarm jolts you awake in the dark, 2 hours before sunrise, notice what you're overriding. A body clock 43,000 years in the making, still faithfully waiting for daylight, still getting ignored in favor of a number on a screen. You wake up in the dark, but this time, you don't just know what time it is by instinct. You know exactly why you don't.